and there'll be another noise. So this evening's Dharma talk is titled, what's it titled?
Don't focus, just gaze.
It's basically a very simple meditation instruction that is, as you've heard in the instruction that was read, I think there was one read this evening, you're just going to sit down, hold still, and just observe what continues to move. And so the idea here of just don't focus, don't just gaze, is to encourage you to do your sitting meditation in such a way that you're on receive. If you focus on anything, focus on the breath, which quite often there's traditional techniques that go back centuries that say, follow the breath. They'll tell you to, if thoughts arise, label thinking, return to the breath, trying to establish or build a good, meditator. Make someone who's really good at meditating. Who, if everybody only knew what a great meditator they are. It's hard to brag about that because it doesn't sit too well with people when you start bragging about your spiritual path. So why would I say it that way? So you can see where I am coming from. I was taught to, the kind I'm saying right now is gaze, or don't focus but gaze. Because that's kind of what I was taught initially by Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche. The instruction was sit down, have your eyes open, and then just didn't say much more. If they did, I forgot what it was. So it was very difficult at first. And later on, he started giving more instructions, more along the traditional line of the Sanskrit words are Shine and Laktung. Shine and Laktung basically translate into English as mindfulness awareness. So what he was teaching there was to a wide range of people that he couldn't really meet face to face, is sit down, hold still, follow your breath. Follow out breath, in breath, out breath. Then he started teaching just the out breath, just follow the out breath. So then you had that little project going on. And all of this time is spent in just trying to focus and be on some kind of a dot or something. And my understanding of this is not to correct him or anyone else who wants to practice meditation in that way, but is rather to emphasize the awareness part of our experience rather than the focus or the tightening down of our awareness on one specific item or thing. It's not that you couldn't do that. You could. And if you want to, well, go ahead. I wouldn't say you'd necessarily be wrong. But the reason I say just gaze is that way you're not missing much. When you focus on something, if I focus on this, as I'm doing right now, I'm ignoring everything else. And you're some of them. So I'm totally ignoring everything else. And of course, this is an extreme, and it's meant as a kind of a silly example, but it's true. If anytime you focus on anything, you have the ego mind, the self-centered mind, has the feeling that it's getting somewhere, it's knowing something, it's understanding something, it's collecting information, like a little detective. But the wisdom mind doesn't need a focus. It doesn't need a non-focus. You don't have to go the other way and don't focus on anything. I'm not saying to go the other way. Just sit down. The best way to do this, to practice this in your daily life, if you decide you want to continue to make meditation part of your life, the most important thing for you to control is this body. You really don't have any control over your mind. Have you noticed that? Because if you did, you'd just be happy. Why would you ever be sad if you can control your mind? Now, there are artificial means to do that, but even they don't last, and they have extremely difficult side effects sometimes. But what can you do? You can hold very still. You can sit very symmetrical. Body and mind, as I've said hundreds of times, are not really separate. They're separated, but the way in which they're separated is not in the way that you impute or that you imagine. Sit down, hold very still, all the senses are open, and just watch all of the sense objects, the sounds, smells, taste, touch, thoughts, sights, everything that's coming towards you in the form of the object of that particular sense consciousness. Just observe. And through this observation, you have a soft gaze. You have something that is not too tight, not too loose. It's just receiving. Now, it may initially, when you first start meditating, it may be like sitting in front of a garbage heap. What you're receiving may be very distasteful, very challenging, and it's very tempting to turn away from it, to find some other kind of meditation, to chant mantras, and don't misunderstand, I'm not saying that mantras aren't valuable. There are times when you could possibly do a mantra practice. So if you don't particularly focus, but you just gaze, in our situation, you sit down, hold still, and you gaze at a wall. And you have to do a lot of it because it will for the first 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 days, 3 weeks, 8 months, whatever length of time, it'll have a similar kind of feeling to it, probably quite a bit like boredom. The downside of boredom feels crummy. The upside of boredom is an indicator that you're weaning yourself away from entertainment. Nothing wrong with entertainment, but you should be the one who decides. You should be the one who determines that you're going to go and party down or whatever you want to do. But you're not. It doesn't sound like something you have to do. You have to get stuck to that. So by just gazing, maybe not right away, but over time you become very, a word that I don't use often, but you become very present. Even the negativity that comes and goes becomes not so entertaining, not so interesting. So, yeah, I have to stop the activity going back and forth or I'm not going to be able to talk.
I'll sit with him here. Let's go.
So as far as having children, I very much want children to be here, but they've got to slow down a little bit because anything that's moving, I watch it. So including all of your facial expressions, your toes wiggling, and of course if something is moving that big, I just get mesmerized by it. Much more interesting than what I have to say. Where was I?
Gazing.
I was. All right. Then I was gazing. Then we're gazing. I'm gazing. You're gazing. We're gazing at the wall. And the feeling of not accomplishing anything or getting bored is an indicator that that's what happens in the mind when we're slowly separating ourselves from the desire, which is one of the three poisons: passion, aggression, and ignorance. The passion to want things to be different than they are. So what you're doing is when you sit down and hold still, instead of feeling all blissful like some meditation teachers or mindfulness awareness practices teach, you're not really doing that. I'm not saying that's wrong. Maybe you shouldn't even be here. When I say it shouldn't be here, of course you should be here, you're here. But to go into, if this doesn't make sense, maybe the other kind of meditation, the calming down and the smoothing out and the feeling good and the bliss kind of thing, or whatever that may be. Maybe that's more appropriate. I don't know. So I'm not here to promote one thing over another. But I'm here to offer that this is a way that you could, without believing in Buddhism, without disbelieving in Buddhism, without believing, disbelieving, ignoring, all of that situation starts to have less and less and less of a hold on you. The wisdom mind you can't find. There are no places to hang your hat on the wisdom mind, which is ego is just full of them. We got all kinds of hats, as you know. And I'm saying if you're having difficulty in some area of your life, it could be, you could give it names like depression or like anger or like frustration or lack of self-esteem. Or it could go on and on. Could be drug problems. Could be just about anything you name. Just some kind of overall feeling of dread all the time you can't seem to shake. I'm saying find some time to sit down, hold still, and watch what the mind is doing. Because that is your entry. And it could take years. I don't want to kid you. Say, well, it might work in a few months. It's not going to. And I'm not saying it wouldn't, but maybe 1 in 10,000 or something. I haven't done taken any surveys. But unlikely. I've met a lot of people. I've been doing this a long, long time. And I've met lots and lots and lots of people who meditate. I've met lots and lots of teachers who teach. And so I've seen something. And it's rare to find someone who doesn't have some kind of agenda about something. Starting with themselves. So I'm happy to respond to questions if you have them, or I can continue to talk.
Just a minute ago, you said it could take months, years for this to work. How does meditation work, or could you expand?
Okay, for a month or years for this to work, I'm saying for you to get have a deep enough understanding where you're no longer at war with anything, and you're no longer at peace with anything. You no longer have a position on anything. And that way, no matter what is happening, 15 inches out in front of you, it's no longer an enemy, it's no longer a friend, and it's no longer something you're going to ignore. It's called wisdom. And wisdom doesn't see anything else. Wisdom always sees itself. So therefore, there's never, even if someone comes at you with, like if you saw the video, it's this astonishing video, and to listen to people talk about it, the video of someone took a parking spot away from someone else and probably didn't even know they were busy with their kids. They probably didn't do it deliberately, probably would have given the person the parking space rather than fight with them. But the person from the one car got out and shoved the person to the ground. The person on the ground pulled out a gun and killed that person. Did anyone see that? Yeah. It's like, that's really a lot of confusion going on there. And there's no blame there. It's just the causes and conditions. We're not saying that somebody couldn't have done something differently, of course, but it's already happened, and it's more like a symptom of the underlying shutting down, blaming others, always blaming someone else. So it's painful to watch, but but the upside of it is this is what's happening everywhere on some level. It might just not be escalate to the position of being killing somebody, but they have what's that stand your ground law, which is stand your ground. How does anybody benefit from that? Yes, sir.
How might wisdom mind show up for someone who's just starting to practice?
The rudimentary form of that is you don't have a clue what's going on, and you don't try to replace it with some kind of imposter knowledge. You actually have a willingness to not know. That's how it shows up. That's why we talked about the book study. The only thing you have to do when you come into book study is just come in and just study. You don't have to understand. And I often, the way I tell people about the way that I teach is I don't care if you retain anything. I don't care if you understand anything I say. You don't have to understand it. If you wanted to know what I think you should do, I think you should meditate. And I think you should listen to someone who's done this a lot. Wouldn't have to be me. Could be someone else. But it shows us up as a not knowing that you're no longer concerned about. Once you actually don't know, and know you don't know, another way of saying that is you know you're a fool. And but you don't try to fix it. Wisdom is starting to show up. Wisdom is not separate. There are no separate beings. And one of the ways that shows up, the egolessness shows up, is seeing that you don't have any solid identity going on. Most of society is trying to crank that up and get you to feel more positive about yourself and have you have a better ego and a more healthy self-image. I'm not interested in promoting that. I am interested in promoting you, anyone here, seeing who you are fundamentally, not just on the surface, not just your name and the description of your personality, but seeing who you are way below the radar of ego, as it's said traditionally in the Zen tradition. What was your face before your parents' birth? Before your parents were born, what did you look like? That's a relative way of questioning that transcends time and space by actually using it. Good question. Yes?
If you start to see that you're a fool and there's an impulse to try to fix that, is there any wisdom there?
Yeah, if you see the impulse, then that's awareness. But if you see the impulse, the impulse may be followed with some kind of ignorance that actually gets you to actually participate in trying to fix it. But if you're really clear, if the passion, aggression, and ignorance are not being fueled, then you just have to sit in no reference point. And depending on how strong or what the ego mind is doing at that time, it can be painful. Spiritual path is difficult. Mundane path's hard enough. Learning how to do a particular job, learning how to, especially if it's something you're not particularly good at, you've got to learn it anyway. It's painful to do that, but it's also very, very painful to try to transcend this world and see who you are fundamentally. So you don't have a problem with anything. So you have no enemies. You have no friend. When I say don't have friends, I'm not saying you're not friendly with people, but it's not based on being attached to anything. It's a very odd kind of thing that can happen in that area, where you still have friendships and they're very strong, and you still, but it isn't like you love this person and dislike that person. It's more like you love everybody. But it's not mushy, particularly sentimental. Yes.
You just said it's painful to transcend this world.
Yes.
What's painful about it?
Because you don't want to leave it. We're attached to this world. We're attached to our homes, our family, our job, our money, our security.
So what does transcending this world look like then?
Who wants to know?
I don't know.
Well, the way I'm trying to characterize it, and probably not being very as clear as I would like to be, but it's just you're going in an area that's can show up to our personality, our ego as being dark, as being a dark area where it's hard to see into that. But because of the teachings, we do it anyway. We keep going. So it's just difficult. And for each person, I can't generalize some people may have difficulty with it in different ways. More?
Not at the moment, thank you.
Shoto?
You said that it's painful because we don't want to leave this world. Does transcending the world leave this world?
Oh, well, what happens is the attachment is not there anymore. This doesn't mean that if you were, on your deathbed and everyone's standing over you looking sad, that you wouldn't feel sad that you were leaving, but you wouldn't be particularly frightened, because you know who you are, and you know you're not separate, and you know that who you are is never threatened. You can't threaten wisdom. There isn't anyone there. That's why it's called, in our tradition, it's called consciousness only, perception only. The perceiver, the me guy, and what is perceived, the wall, the window, the lights, the other person, the otherness, are not separate. They are brought together in the perception itself. And if you can see that everything is not something else, and it's not a subjectivity, it's not an objectivity, it's just the perception. It's called not two, non-duality. Advaita is the fancy Sanskrit word for it. And it's a realization, not an experience. It might have experiential overtones, undertones. It might be experiential qualities that arise in that area, like noticing that when things get really going really in a negative direction, you're not concerned about it. That doesn't mean you're taking your eyes off from it. That doesn't mean you're not trying to maybe solve that problem as that's coming apart and that's falling off and that's catching fire and this is getting wet, those kind of things, It's not that you're not trying to do that, but you notice that there's not any real panic going on about it. You're not concerned about the outcome. What are you concerned about? In this tradition, you're concerned about the truth, and you're concerned about saving all beings or helping others, putting others before yourself. That doesn't mean that you that doesn't mean that you run into a burning building where you can't really rescue anyone because you're going to get burned up in there. Doesn't mean that. It's not that kind of heroism.
Does deepening our own practice help others?
Yeah.
In what way?
Yeah, thank you. Because fundamentally, we're not separate from anyone else. We're not really separate. It's just an astonishing thing to find out. You just find out that really the whole idea of people trying to control things is just like, it's like watching a bunch of clowns. They don't know they're clowns, but you do. But you don't accuse them of being clowns. You see if there's any opening where the clown might help you. You might be able to help that clown see that they're wearing a big red nose. And since we're not separate, like Mariah, Shane, and I were talking earlier about, we're so not separate that even in really, really deep consciousness, like dreams or any kind of, we all dream, that area, we're not separate from that. That's no different than this. It's different because we think that this one's real and that one's not real. But when you're in the middle of that one's real. In the Tibetan tradition, that's how they call that the sample dream. The dream you have at night is a dream that shows you what a dream is. But this is the real dream. This is unreal. Not saying that there isn't a body here with nerve endings and so on. If any of you had a dream where you had a dream about the taste of something or the smell of something that was so intense, and then you woke up and realized that that was totally a dream and imagination. But when it's in one of those sense fields that are very intimate, especially like taste, touch, smell, there's not much to think about. Those sense consciousnesses don't do much thinking, if at all. Those are extremely real. Real is imputed, imagined. More questions would be good, especially for someone who hasn't asked one.
How can you help somebody who's looking for this consciousness?
Again, please.
How can you help somebody find what they're looking for in meditation and in their consciousness?
So you can't really help anybody without their permission. And even when they give you permission, sometimes they're not really leveling with you. They just want to be somebody who's asking for help. And then if they can get you to come and try to help them, then they can watch you fail. It just gives you something to do while they're continuing to spin around in their merry-go-round, personal merry-go-round, and you're chasing them around trying to try this. Have you tried that? Have you tried this? Don't do that. You actually are helping them more by not meddling in their suffering and their difficulty. But at the same time, grace, you wouldn't take your eyes off of them. In other words, you wouldn't look away. You wouldn't say, I can't help you. You would just look. You might even say, how can I help you? And they might say, well, I've told you how you can help me. You're not helping me. You're not helpful at all. You just do this. I tried to get you to do this or this. You know what it's like. We all know some version of that. And just hold your ground and say, well, I'm just doing the best I can. Some kind of a comment like that doesn't charge this thing up into some kind of an argument. Saying, well, how can I help you? And really, we have to do it ourselves. That's why it's so difficult. It's because to discover that, that's what the spiritual path is about. The mundane path of getting better, getting a healthy ego, getting rid of your neurosis, being a really sane person, is an admirable thing to do. And if we never died, probably would work quite well. After about 800 or 900 years, you'd be just happy as what do they call those? Larks. Happy as one of those birds. But instead, we don't. We can die soon. Death comes, as it says in the Buddha's teachings, death comes without warning. This body will be a corpse. That's not pessimism or nihilism. That's the truth. So that's why it is often said, find out who you are before that time comes, whether it can be tomorrow or 20 years, 100 years from now. Find out who you are first, so when you die, you find that there isn't anything that dies. Who you are can't die. Who you are, and this is not for you to believe or disbelieve. Who you are hasn't been born. Body comes into existence, passes out, but who you are doesn't do anything. Are those new tattoos?
No. I just don't show them. I just don't show them.
Oh, you just usually wear socks?
No. Usually so.
Oh, I didn't. Well, I don't show my tattoo either, but I will, though. My tattoo. But,
Are you gonna tell
Huh?
how you got the tattoo?
nope. You have a question?
Sometimes you talk about the three jewels, the Buddha, as being an example of someone who is sane.
Yes.
But I think I just heard you talk about sanity can also be part of the mundane path.
Yes. Relative sanity.
So what's the difference?
The relative sanity works fine unless the whole world goes to pieces, and then you start to freak out with the rest of the world because we're not separate. So we align ourselves with whatever's happening, and if everything is going okay, then you get pretty sane. The insane person is someone who's crazy when everything else is fine. But when everything goes to pieces, the person who is sane in a spiritual sense, excuse me, won't necessarily fall into that circularity or that trap. It's difficult to talk about that conceptually. I'm happy to do more of that if you ask specific questions, including you, if you have more questions about that. I feel like I leave off some part of it that I could go more deeply into.
I think I'm caught in thinking that sanity, when it's in regard to the Buddha, is spiritual, but somehow there's no room for that in the mundane path.
Oh, there's a relative. We all know someone. Maybe it's you, but we don't have. We know people who just are fine. They get along good. They don't argue with people. They're easygoing. They help their neighbors. They have. They're just doing well. In the Buddhist tradition, this is basically called a God realm. It's not an accusation or a wrong thing. It's just a state of mind where everything is going good. You have, as sometimes is said, good karma. You come in, you have, you're born into a good family. Your parents have some money. Your intelligence level is pretty high. Not of your choosing. Do you remember choosing that? Like what are the joke they sometimes made? Where were you at when they were handing out brains? Remember that joke? I was over looking to try to get some really big feet. I misunderstood. Some people want big feet. They want to walk on water. So it's that kind of a dynamic, though. It's that kind of a that whatever happens, it's not that you're fine with it. It's just you're not at war with anything. So you're not. So even though things get very difficult, you're not really at war. Whereas the mundane path, as long as everything is okay, then you're not going to have some kind of unresolved anger come up. And so if something starts to go haywire, then you might have some more difficulty with it. Yes.
What's the difference between not going to war with something and being fine with something?
So I think it would be an individual dynamic. I mean, it could be, if you're, for instance, we try to say this in a way that's as clear as possible using concepts. So your next door neighbor starts mowing their lawn more and more, taking a little bit more of your property. They just keep mowing, and you could say, well, they're trying to help me out. No, they're not. They're trying to take over. And so how you work with that could be the way that could be worked with is to work with that dynamic of that person rather than work with you think they're wrong, making a mistake, and they need to be stopped or shut down or accused or whatever. Just not going to war with it, but not going to peace. When I say that, I mean, don't go over and pacify the whole thing necessarily. You might take a risk and come out and say to them, hey, what's up with the lawn mowing? You're going to charge me for that? It's my lawn. Yes.
My question is, what if I'm on this, I know what path I need to take, my spiritual path, and I feel strongly about that, but I keep getting these other things thrown in front of me, these other obstacles right now, because it's really through no choice of my own where I'm at right now. But I know what path I want to choose.
What's the problem?
Well, I'm in recovery
I don't know.
right now. Okay. And this is the path I choose, is this spiritual path, the meditation, and
Okay.
that's what suits me the
Okay.
best.
What sounds good to me. So what's the problem?
Well, I have to go through that program and all this other stuff that they throw at.
Well, just go ahead.
Learn, take advantage of that
yeah,
learning.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. Don't do anything with it. Just you're there. So whatever shows up, just try to don't agree, don't disagree, and they're going to badger you no matter what you do. I'm familiar with that situation over there, and to some people that's extremely helpful. That whole program that they have there. Some people are just all about being their life being saved, and other people want no part of it, and then other people might be like you and say, this is confusing because they're teaching me to do this and do that. One of the things that they do in a lot of recoveries is try to get you to have a healthy ego, have a good self-image. And I'm not saying there isn't something to that for some people, but to do it as a blanket thing that everybody has to do, that's a misunderstanding. Everybody has to be met. If you're going to help somebody, you have to meet them where they're at. And if you haven't met yourself where you're at, you're going to do a real crappy job of meeting others where they're at, because you're probably going to meet who you think they are. Because you'll project. That's the thing about a projection. If you can see a projection, you stop doing it. If you see you're projecting on someone, maybe you might not stop doing it, but you stop believing it. You realize you're projecting on that person. So in the whole program there, they project on everybody. These people are whatever addicts, and this is what we need to do to fix them. MRT and CBT and all the different, what do they call those?
Groups.
What?
Groups.
Grids?
Steps.
Trends.
Programs.
Trends?
Tracks.
Tracks?
But different things.
Huh?
It's just different things.
So what was your name?
Kelly.
Kelly. So just keep doing it. You got some time, a few weeks to do or whatever. Yeah, just keep doing it. Don't agree, don't disagree, don't do it. Just go along with it for a while. When you were you a meditator all along? So
I haven't.
eyes open.
I'm learning.
Eyes open. Keep your eyes open. This is what we do when we sleep. This is what we do when we're awake. If you close your eyes, I don't care how good you feel. It's circular. You have good experiences and bad experiences. So keep going. You have some time? Anyone else? Yes, Michelle.
What might it look like to put somebody else before ourselves?
I would say it would, depending on, it would be so different in every situation. You know, if you're a child, you're always going to you put them before yourself. I mean, I'm not saying that you can't be some children that aren't abused, possibly that does happen, but generally speaking, your mother and father are really going to put their children first. So that's one thing. So are you speaking of a particular situation or?
I guess generally when you say, following the path and putting others before ourselves,
I do.
what that looks like.
Well, I think it's not ignoring how you're feeling and not shutting down on it and not being some kind of a martyr and having little things inside of your mind saying, I'm doing my very best. Why can't they see how much I'm trying to help them? Those kind of things are a little suspicious. But to just see where people are at and notice that you almost have to start seeing how you've been putting yourself first before everything. You have to first see that, and that can be kind of embarrassing. We sit and we meditate, and we slowly over time realize how we're just full of ourselves, and we're always thinking about me, and me and my stuff, my ideas, and who likes me, who doesn't like me, what I've done, why people don't appreciate me. It's difficult, and sometimes the person that has the roughest time about that is our partner, because we're very close to them, or someone that we're really close to. Might have, because we tend to project onto them and then to try to solve our misunderstanding because we think it's them. So we try to fix them. So project onto something and then fix it or blame it or straighten up or that kind of thing. Not always, but sometimes. More?
You answered my question.
Okay, good. Yes.
As
Right.
far as like the closing of the eyes during meditation, you were talking earlier about how when that dreaming and reality, like they're both real.
Yes.
So when we dream, even though our eyes are closed, we still see in a sense.
We do.
So what you could meditate and see in that sense while you're meditating.
Yeah, but then the physical body's asleep, and so then you're, a lot of words for this, but let's use the word astral body.
Mm-hmm.
Your consciousness has switched gears, and it's the physical body's asleep, not doing much. Then the eyes can be closed, everything else is shut down. I think maybe the sense of hearing still works to some extent, but so you're just in a different realm. And there's not just those two. There's probably just countless numbers of realms. You have some experience with that already. So, basic question.
So basically, it's about being present in
It is.
the reality that we're in.
Whatever it is, yeah. And if you can have a practice here where you're awake right now and you're looking at the wall, there's nothing else to do. You don't have to figure anything out. You don't have to believe in anything, disbelieve anything. You don't have to do anything. Realization, Buddha nature, or awakened truth will come to you because it's not separate from you in the first place. It's your birthright. And so, just like when you go to sleep, then that's another dimension. I encourage people to write down your dreams, as you said that you and Shane do. Keep track of those. Try to remember. Try to keep your awareness going down into that area of consciousness, because time and space function there as they actually are, rather than the way it is here. This is the one where it looks like things are happening and then things stop happening. It's quite a magic show. But that area, there's no time and space. There's something there, but what is that? Is there a space? Can you measure anything in a dream? No. Can't measure anything. You can't, sometimes you can even get your identity mixed up with other identities. Powerful area to work in. There's even, in the Tibetan tradition, the 6 yogas of Naropa, one of them is the dream yoga, where you actually, have different techniques for operating in the dream world. I don't necessarily recommend that because Tibetan Buddhist yoga practices are very, very complicated. And I'm not saying they don't work, but I'm just saying a lot of protocols there. And I think you can actually just go to sleep with the intention of seeing what's going on in your dream. Is anyone here not had a lucid dream? You know what a lucid dream?
What's a lucid dream?
A lucid dream is when you're asleep and then you're dreaming, and then you know that you're dreaming. You wake up inside the dream, and you can actually do things. You can look at things. You can look at a dream landscape, and it's sometimes has more reality than this landscape, and you can actually move in it to some extent. Anyone not had that? You've never had one? Well, you've got something to look forward to then. It's probably going to happen, yes.
Why is in that lucid state, it seems right on the cusp of this plane too, like you're ready to fall right back out of it?
Because they're not separate. Just like right now, everyone in here, I'm not accusing you of anything, but I'm saying right now there are big gaps in your attention. I'm not accusing you of anything, I'm just offering this because I'm experiencing them myself, and I've been looking at whatever this situation is for a long time. So I know that if I'm seeing this, then this is happening for you. This is called ignorance. You can't see. The very nature of ignorance is to not see, understand, be aware. So you can't see that because there is no way to get outside and look at that. So you can see passion, grasping. You can see aggression, throwing away or chopping up or getting rid of or killing. But ignorance, or just distracting yourself or turning away, is much more subtle. That's what the sitting practice of meditation eventually will open that up to you, so that you don't ignore anything.
Why does it seem necessary to root our practice in this physical body?
Why does it seem necessary to what?
To root our practice with the eyes open in this body.
That's an area that you have to actually have some say-so about. You can put your hands here, you can put your hands here. You can put one hand here, you can lean, you have a lot of say-so about this. The problem is you didn't have any say-so about how this got into this. You don't know how you got here. You don't know if you could do it again, or if you'd even want to. Who we actually are is not even human. Human is just a reference point, a temporary, very, very temporary, if you want to go along with the idea that 50, 60 years is temporary. Well, I should say more than that because I'm older than that. 120 years. Gotta give myself some room here. Keep eating spinach and celery and fasting. Good question. Any other, we have a minute or two left. Any question from anyone who's not? Yes, Shok.
Does consciousness always embody a form?
Well, I don't think so. I don't know exactly how you're asking that. And you of all people shouldn't be asking me that. I follow you, but let's clarify it for other people in here.
What does consciousness look like when it's not in a form?
Okay, so this is an example I've used many times, but if I say something, even though you're all separate, I'm all separate from you, you're separate from me, but consciousness doesn't belong to anyone. And if you understand what it is, it's an astonishing understanding of power that you will not abuse. because you understand it so thoroughly that you would never harm yourself. You're not separate from anything or anyone. So you would never take advantage of anyone. You would never take anything that was not given to you. So, and one of the ways I do this, I say, imagine a bowl of green jello sitting on a table. Does everybody see it? No. What color is the table? Grace?
Brown.
What color is the table?
It's actually a cafeteria line.
Okay. Robert, what color is the table?
This wood, just plain wood.
Okay. Okay, Sarah?
It's glass, it's clear.
It's colored glass. Ryan?
Great.
See, look at all those, and I didn't tell you what color to do those. You guys came up with it. You guys. You know, it's mutable. It's just all over the place. It's got so much energy. It's going so many different places. It's just like, you know, it's just like the human body. If you look into, I can imagine what it was like back when Leonardo da Vinci was dissecting bodies and drawing insides of bodies in the morgue. It must have been fascinating to not have known what that was about, and then to take them apart and see how things were, all the different things that had to happen for an arm to work. It's just, we so take everything for granted. Amazing. Did anybody have any other colored jello? Okay, so you can follow orders. So what is that about? That's about saying you had an experience where you could say, if you wanted to use the relative, that I put something into your mind. We did it together. We cooperated. I used, by intending something, I put that into your mind. That's it. That's how dreams work. Same way, only I'm not around to do that for you. You do it to yourself. You do it based on causes and conditions that who knows where those come from. How many different lifetimes have had to come about. Not that I'm promoting reincarnation or rebirth. I don't have any interest in those particular concepts. I think they miss the point. The point is consciousness doesn't belong to anybody, and being awake and being asleep and being alive and being dead are not separate. Separated. See how I did that? Separated. I should give a talk on public speaking. Separated. I'll make my point. I should say it's not separate. So, am I asking you to believe me? No, certainly not. I'm just saying, consider that. Consider your own consciousness when you go to sleep. Write down a few dreams. Look at the dreams and see what it is about the dream that is unique to your life or to you, to your experience. Keeping a dream journal is not such a bad idea to do. Further questions about anything at all? Shut up.
When you give us the prompt of the green jello, is our differences in the table a result of our karma?
You could say that. Result of just unsearchable. Unsearchable. You're not going to find, it's like the example I often use is you're standing at the mouth of the Amazon, and you look at the mouth of the Amazon and say, where did this come from? And of course, if you track it down, you're going to get lost in the jungle because every little river goes somewhere else. So and that's a kind of a mundane idea, but probably consciousness is even more extensive than that. Just unsearchable. So what do we do with that? What does this teaching say about that? Everything you need to know or everything you're looking for is available right now, right here in front. It's in front of you. Not just me, because I'm up here, but this wall, those flowers, this stick, that computer, your life, your footsteps, going through a doorway, going to a car, getting in a car. What a strange thing a car is. 1,000 years ago, someone would look at a car and think, what is that? It has donuts on it. So don't take anything for granted. Just go out and meet your world. It's your world. It's your sense fields that are sensing all of this. And you don't know if this is going to happen again or not. Very good, thank you.
We'll stand and dedicate the merit that's in the back of our chant books. I'd like to again remind everybody about tomorrow's dedication service, memorial service for Coben. And this Saturday's all day. Please come and participate if you can. And then our donation boxes in the hallway. We do accept debit and credit cards as well, so we'd be happy to take your money in whatever form you can provide.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho san shi shi hu shi son bu sa mo ho sa wo ho ja ho ro mi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Parmita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions in the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.